Welcome, everybody, to the Stream of Chaos. My name is James, and I am, well, I'm not really the keeper for this game anymore because it's done. It's done. This is the epilogue episode of Shadows Over Stillwater, the Call of Cthulhu campaign set in the Down Darker Trail setting that we have been playing for 20 sessions, bringing us now to this final wrap-up epilogue episode where we'll be talking about the campaign, going over any questions that you have and that each other has, and in general, reminiscing before we move on to what's next. And we'll tell you all about that, or at least give you some hints about that at the end of the episode. But as always, I am joined by this fantastic cast, and I think we need an extra big thanks to them today because this is really the time when we get to acknowledge how much they've contributed. So I am joined. Why don't you start, Jackson? Why don't you tell everybody who you are?
Well, hi, I'm Jackson, and I have been Jeremiah MacDonald, the U.S. Marshal sent to take down the terrible green-eyed gang and occultist within, and it's kind of ended up a bit of a cultist himself, but that's how things go out here in the Weird West.
Absolutely. Daniel, what about you?
Hey guys, I'm Daniel. I played in the past tense. Griff Gutherson, Agent Mountain Man, and I think Griff got the nicest end. He got to retire back to his mountain with all of his ghost friends who no longer haunted him. He had a great ending in a way that's very unCall of Cthulhu.
Absolutely fantastic. Art, what about yourself?
Hi, I'm Art. I played Dr. Joseph Waite, and my boy died. Bless his soul. He went mad, flung himself off the deep end of insanity, was shot, and came back as a spirit who was also mad.
All pretty fantastic. And Dave?
G'day, I'm Dave. I've played Grease throughout this, and my gift to you, the viewers, is I'm never going to do that accent again. So
It was flawless.
It was
iconic.
It was grating, and I loved it.
It is not one you forget in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. So look, Shadows Over Stillwater was fantastic. Now, obviously you can catch up with the adventures if you are just joining us now, or if you haven't seen all of the campaign. You can catch up with all of the episodes on YouTube, or you can go directly and you can grab the Shadows Over Stillwater book from Chaosium. It's fantastic. It's got a bunch of great scenarios inside it, and we'll be diving into what we drew from it, what we use, and talking about the scenarios inside. Now, we also played using Down Darker Trails, of course, which is the master source book for the Down Darker Trails setting, if you want to play in the Wild West. And we played some of the scenarios in that too, specifically the terrible ones that took place in the Scanlan Ranch and in Jim Owen's mine. Both came from Down Darker Trails rather than Shadows Over Stillwater. We started the campaign all the way back in June. That was our first streamed episode, although Art reminded me that we did have some test episodes where we made sure that we had our characters prepared and everything like that beforehand.
That was June 2020, so about 14 years ago.
Yeah,
exactly.
Feels like it sometimes.
I think I've aged a decade for many reasons, not including being my character for that.
So we encourage you in chat to jump forward at any point with any questions you have for any of us. We're very happy to talk to anything that's happened during the campaign, but we're also going to be talking about what we think is the most useful thing for players to know and keepers to know as they approach these scenarios and these settings, and how to get the most out of the adventures that you have in the Down Darker Trail setting. First of all, I have a couple of questions for the cast just to get conversation flowing. Some interesting things I'd like to throw your way. What do you think the best role of the entire campaign was for you? Your best role as a character? Sometimes roles are specifically important. I'm thinking back to when Joseph Fisher blew up the entire world and, doomed Berlin during our Berlin, the Wicked City campaign. Griff, you looked like you had an answer though.
I was going to say, I feel like just the most awesome moment was when I think Grease was dueling in the streets without a gun, and I was hiding in the background and shot the guy.
That was
I thought that felt
fucking awesome.
That just
That was so
felt
good.
really nice and like it was just delicious.
It was also good because we
Amazing.
planned just not an inch of it. We lacked the intelligence for preparation.
I feel like we came up with it at the same time, which was as you were facing him down and as I was hiding in the shadows. We were like, I think we can do this.
You've got a plan, and you burnt, I think, a colossal amount of luck to make that work. But you got there in the end. That was an awesome.
So maybe it wasn't as a legitimate role. As
Hey,
it was,
you know,
sometimes you get lucky.
Luck's legitimate.
Cool.
That's what it's for.
Exactly. What about the rest of you? Any thoughts? Any specific instances?
Like, I do not remember past like last session. I've got like all my notes that I'm going through now. I'm like, what fun things happened? I don't remember.
Absolutely. Well, I'll jump in with mine. And, you know, being a cruel keeper, I'm going to focus on my favorite moment, which was when you all sprinted around a corner in, I think, the second episode and ran onto a serpent person grenade
That was
and
Oh,
managed
yeah.
to
was-
blow yourself.
And that
all-
haunted us for like 6 sessions because we were always
We
like,
never
we were on like
healed.
4
Yeah.
health. Like we were really hurt the whole time because like 4 of us stepped on this grenade. Oh,
Absolutely. And that was just a grenade tossed frantically behind one of the fleeing serpent people, but it managed to do a great deal of damage. So that was very fun from my perspective.
oh, I'm glad you enjoyed that, Jack.
Oh,
Yeah.
why, thank you. And really, it was your role. So I you can all put your failed dexterity checks or dodge checks as a successful moment for me.
I don't remember the. Oh,
After you, Jackson, do you jump in? You.
nice. I don't remember the roles that were involved, but I think we had exactly one time where like the ambush and arrest of a bunch of bandits went perfectly, and that was outside the
Oh,
SEAL Team
yeah, that
6?
was-
when they were camping. It was like in the darkness, perfect kind of
we all,
military efficiency, sneaking up on them. And then it turned out it was just because they were nuts and ready to surrender anyway.
You know what the opposite?
They weren't actually quite ready to surrender. I think you extreme success in intimidate check, or at least you got a couple of good ones in there.
That doesn't sound like me.
They were very happy to fight if they needed to, but you really took them by surprise. So that was perfect execution. Of course, you had the mountain lion running out of a cave just before that.
yeah.
Successful.
Yeah, I remember that.
I think
History
we were
of
so
bad
surprised
navigation
that that
rolls.
went off without a hitch. Like they surrendered. We went, what's the catch here? Like, why are they? Why,
The
I
opposite
don't
of that was
understand.
in
Like,
Shade. Do you remember that like tapestry joint we tried to take out? And it was just a cluster of bad
Tapestry
rolls and
No, the
it was like a
tailors.
fabric tailors or
Yeah.
something. And
Yep.
Griff and I stumbled around upstairs and attacked a lizard, and you guys just got like this local shopkeeper. I think it ended with arson, which was
Terrorized.
always a good sign.
That was Santa Rosita or San Rafael?
Yeah, it was Santa Rosita, I think.
It was in
The bigger
Santa
one.
Rosita, I think, and that was when you were trying to catch the lizard person impersonating Maria Romero.
Yeah.
Mm. And we did catch her, so in the end it was successful. But man, that took some fucking around.
Yeah, it could have gone a lot worse too. Thankfully, you managed to sneak out before the entire town launched upon you and tried to drag you back into the quarantine they had set up. Art, do you have a suggestion of a moment?
I mean, I'm just going to be selfish and say like 90% of the last 2 episodes where I was rolling like extreme successes for everything awful under the sun. Getting a Star Spawn of Cthulhu with an extreme success, I'm pretty proud of.
That was fantastic.
But I also looked up the stats for that thing after our session, and that went down much quicker than I think it should have.
I think it was all thanks to that one extreme success that fired in. But those things are deadly. Very easily could have wiped the field with the whole party. So that was very.
Better luck next time.
Absolutely. Oh, you're in ghost form now. You can summon it while you're a ghost. Surely shouldn't be that difficult.
Not though.
Yeah, maybe.
I might leave that one. It might be a little pissed that we killed it.
Absolutely. So, in the grand theme of me throwing out a couple more questions to you all, do you have a character that sticks in your mind? A best character or a worst character?
Could it be me?
Apart from investigators, of course. Was there a sheriff who really won your heart with their style of work?
I was just gonna say, I really liked the entire kind of cast of sheriffs that we encountered.
Cast of dropkicks.
I wish they'd all been
so terrible until the last one in Shade, and then he kind of saved a lot. But I just thought it was funny. At the end of every kind of town kind of wrap up session, Jamie would ask me, "What's Mac doing?" I'm like, "I'm electing a new sheriff."
Valentine wasn't too bad. Valentine in Santa Rosita was okay.
Yeah, but he was a deputy. He wasn't a real sheriff.
He was all
Deputy
right.
Valentine, you are right. Yeah, he wasn't technically the sheriff.
He was also, I'm still pretty sure, a lizard.
What did you say, Art? I'm sorry, I missed what you just said.
He kicked us out.
He did kick you out, yeah, and that
Yeah,
was
but we
a bad
deserved it.
move.
That was the best decision he made.
Yeah.
Yeah, not such a terrible idea on his part. So sheriffs, that counts them out. What about was there anyone stuck in your mind? Was the equivalent
The Lightning Kid was pretty cool.
the Lightning Kid?
Before we murdered him,
Lightning
I
fucking
liked his
sucked.
vibe of just being like, I'm the best. Like,
He's an elite gunslinger. Yeah, he has a bunch of cool stuff, but unfortunately, he got rather shot in the head by a buffalo rifle pretty quickly.
And then
I think-
stabbed with a scalpel
yes,
for the second
impaled
one.
to a table.
no bullet removal
That
device.
was it.
That's it. That's it.
That was a little bit more like a stake. It's like a screwdriver on a long pointy thing with a handle.
Hey, Jim, what was in the fighting pit that we didn't do?
Yeah, fighting pit. Okay, well, let's.
Where was the fighting pit in each town?
The secret fighting pit in each town. Well, let's use that as a springboard, I suppose, and let's jump into talking about the actual campaigns. Before we dive in, do any of you have a question that you'd like to ask the rest of the players first, before we sort of talk about each of the scenarios?
I have some. They'll come up.
I was going to come up with one with everyone, but I didn't get there. So someone was a stall for me. I could have gotten away with not saying anything.
I did want
That's all right.
to say in terms of characters, the villains were all. I really liked all the villains, and I liked that there were a few of us that were very concentrated on revenge or vengeance in some way, shape, or form. Less so the Doctor, I think, but. And there was always a complication that came with it, and some like the marshal was just like, nah, you broke the law, you hang. But I really liked Griff's complication in that the one thing that he wanted to do he couldn't, and I think that turned out so well, and I really enjoyed how that turned out. And I think both the keeper and the players who stopped me killing them, despite me, I think, swinging an axe at Mac, I think. And I appreciate you taking that so well, Jackson.
Good times. Well, that set up the glorious moment. That was an excellent scene. It set up the moment.
Yeah,
handing Grease the badge as well. That was a highlight.
And then immediately
that was
regretting it in the following episodes.
Yeah, I think it takes a testament to Jamie here as our keeper. It takes a lot of work to create unique villains that each have a twist that is unique to them and makes you go, I don't want to kill them.
Well, that's very kind of you. I think it's a combination of all of you having such wonderful characters that had really strong goals, and all you have to do is figure out somebody that would have a problem with that goal, and also the foundation of each of the campaigns in the books being very strong and me being able to adapt them to fit with one of the Green-Eyed Gang. So let's talk about let's go back through memory lane and let's talk about what we actually did. So we started the scenario with a session 0 type thing. We jumped in and we started, I believe this is all before we actually played in El Paso, I think was our first scene.
Correct.
Grease and Mac coming off the train. I think Doc rolling in on a wagon. Of course, Griff, I think riding in, and on horse, of course. And Blanco was with us at the time, who we'll give a proper thanks to at some point, I am sure, just a little later in the episode. But we went from El Paso moving through. We had a kind of test run where we we were hinting at what was going to happen, and we mentioned Stillwater. We introduced the idea of the Green-Eyed Gang. The Green-Eyed Gang is the only part of the campaign that we really added. It was the framework that joined together all of the unique scenarios from Shadows Over Stillwater and Down Darker Trails. So basically the villains from each of these linked together in one overarching gang. The first thing that we jumped in with was Shadows Over Stillwater, which is the 3-part campaign that makes up the bulk of the Shadows Over Stillwater book. It introduces a town of Stillwater, which isn't actually the biggest town in the book. It explains Santa Rosita, and some other unique towns at the end of the book. I really liked the priest that you spoke to, Grease. The fire and brimstone priest that you sort of connected with. I thought that was pretty cool.
It was very good.
Yeah, and then teared off into the mountains there. Did you all actually hate Stillwater? Was it a terrible town? Did it have no redeeming features?
No, it's because they were scumbags. Like they were. Also, it was one event where they rung the bell that summoned the zombies or whatever and let them in, and they attacked Griff because some stupid child, and they just were. They were the worst.
Yeah, I mean,
That's really fascinating because, like,
and they wouldn't let us kill their leader.
And we really wanted to.
Right, was we killed someone that they liked, and they didn't want us to do that. So, like, for me as a player and as a character, I did not have a problem with Stillwater because I thought what y'all did was wrong. Yeah. Like, that was just there was a few points during the campaign that I think Joseph like kind of dug at Mac a little for a few things that he did, and that was specifically because he killed Hank Hanratty, who was like, Joseph the whole time was like, that's not cool. Like, you can't murder someone who's trying to make a better life for themselves. That ain't a thing, yo. So I really liked Stillwater as like a town. I thought they were a really interesting group of people that had a very good reason to hate us, and I thought, like, yeah, they have a good reason to hate us, and they should.
They weren't very keen on you by the end of it. So it was kind of a mutual hatred. Stillwater is a really interesting scenario because there's a couple of ways that it can go. The idea is that when you come in, this town is already in the throes of the infection that's being applied by the serpent people. So all the while you're trying to avoid succumbing to it yourself, you're trying to figure out where the source of it is. And you're also trying to track down Hank Hanratty at the same time. So it's a little busy. There's quite a lot going on. And by the time the zombies start coming, you can be in town and it can be all chaotic there, or you can be out in the mountains and return to a chaotic town, which is what happened to the collection of you. So there's a few ways that can move.
So Hank Hanratty is in the book.
Hank Hanratty is in the book, but Hank Hanratty is basically just a gangster who you track down and who ultimately has very little relevance to the campaign at large. Hank Hanratty is also, and you can see how I've been vicious to you here, Mac, not very redeemable. He is pretty happy to start shooting at you.
Right, in the book.
Yeah.
But I think that change made it a lot more interesting. It made
so
Mac's decision to still string him up and Mac's decision to stick to the law more influential, even though it cost us reputation and sway in the town. I think that was an interesting way for the story to go.
And it set up the tone of the campaign because, you know, if you're playing an RPG in the Wild West, you expect to, you know, be going in guns blazing, shooting all the bad guys all the town, and yet, you know, Call of Cthulhu is it's a narrative game about tough moral choices sometimes.
Absolutely. That's a large part of it. You know, where's the horror, what's the horror? And I think that was a really good setup to the campaign.
Sometimes the real horror is man.
One of the other big parts of the first two blocks of Shadows Over Stillwater is Hiram Colby, who you may or may not remember. This is the trader who sold you the special observation devices that the Serpent people use, and who you killed rather enthusiastically. So Hiram never got to quite do all of his machinations, but he should have been a bit smarter about it. So that was
Another problem solved by murder.
That was great.
So that the first scenario of Shadows Over Stillwater in the 3-part Shadows Over Stillwater is Lazarus in Spades, and that's when you're in the town itself. After Lazarus in Spades, you go into the mountain, the Serpent Person's lair, and that's Trouble on Knife Cut Mesa. That's when you meet Taza and the band of Chiricahua Apache. That's when you're chasing through and running from all the undead. That's when you're desperately fighting against the Serpent people in the collapsing facility. What I thought was really interesting about that one in particular is that the mountain is actually collapsing around you. When you come in, it's very clear that the Serpent people aren't really armed and protected enough to resist an assault. So their response when you arrive is to try and fool you into thinking that they're a lot better armed than they are and use a lot of bluster. And then they're pretty happy to collapse the whole place to stop you from being able to kill them all and to uncover their operation and stuff like that. Thankfully, you had the tunnels that you were able to get out through.
For a faction with limited weaponry, they sure grenaded the shit out of us.
They have their technology, but they actually, that's about it. They had some grenades that they were happy to throw.
It was like a two-way bluff, right? They're like, we have no weaponry. If they fight us, we'll lose. And we're like, we are all on 2 health. If they fight us, we lose. But neither of us yielding, and everyone just doing dumb shit at one another.
From my perspective, it was absolutely wonderful dramatic irony because neither of you quite had the ability to assault the other group. Especially since, and I have the names and details of all the Serpent people in the book. They're like technicians and scientists, and they're Serpent people who are scary and alien, but they're not like warrior Serpent people. I think there's one of them who's the equivalent of a security guard, but it's a part-time security guard, mostly scientists. So they weren't really sure how to deal with two trained lawmen, a bandit, expert doctor, and a mountain man tearing into their
it's the classic, like, they had machinations, but as soon as like someone wasn't under the influence of their potion or whatever, they were like, oh, we are in trouble.
Exactly.
They had machinations. We had Mac.
Since you chased down Hiram Colby and actually found the path in through the mountains, you kind of got through the secret entrance. The main way in is to go down into the valley, and you fight your way through the tunnels that you escaped through. And there's several encounters along the way with the Serpent Person sort of hybrid things.
We just got grenaded a bunch.
Exactly. After that, there's Shattered Earth, Poisoned Sky, which is when you all head through to Santa Rosita. That's when you get trapped in quarantine, which was oddly apt at the time we were playing it for what was happening.
It was properly strange, constantly referencing the quarantine in game.
In quarantine.
And how unwilling our characters were to submit to it.
I actually think we were pretty good. We were all like, once we realized what it was
You're right,
doing,
we did
were
it
like,
up until they tried to poison us, and then we're like, okay,
oh, yeah.
it's no more.
It was interesting dealing with a crazy kind of conspiracy theorist, anti-quarantine bandito in there.
Yeah, that was a bit of fun.
Finally got to beat someone up.
We technically stayed in the quarantine for the full amount of time, though.
You did. You said you were let back out into the town by Deputy Valentine very happily. David, Deputy Valentine was not a lizard.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, don't believe
Why
that.
was he acting like one?
He wasn't acting like one. He was defending the town the very
Everyone's
best
a
that he could.
lizard.
Yeah, I just
Second
assumed
question,
everyone I
was
met
the
a
president a lizard?
The president. Well,
How high up does this go?
I guess that
that information is not in the book.
the
It's in the sequel.
there's a there's a butcher's shop inside Santa Rosita, and underneath that butcher's shop, amidst like hanging meat, is the hidden fighting ring there. So that's where you have to go in that town if you want to get the trophy. It's actually like the hardest one when you go to. You're meant to like sort of get to it and be like, oh, I can't do this yet, and you're meant to go out to the other.
Because you fight the president. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. There was a laundromat in the first one as well, right? That you kept mentioning a laundromat that we never went to either. Was that important in Stillwater, I think?
Yeah, there's a laundry in Stillwater.
Was it important?
Stillwater. The laundry in
ultimately no
is an interesting story. It is owned by a Chinese immigrant, and the effect of the sporific poison on Stillwater is that he's forgotten how to speak in English because he's only recently learned
like
it.
the German dude that we ran into.
Exactly. So he has information and he can tell you if you can find a way to communicate, because he's noticed Hiram Coley acting a bit weird, and he's kind of like, I think there's something going on, but I don't really know how to tell anyone.
Oh, hell yeah.
Was that German dude just insane? I know we're flashing forward a little bit here, but I was interested to know, or was it something spookier?
So the German dude, obviously. So we jump out of Shadows Over Stillwater. We'll just give some context to people. So that was something down there from Down Darker Trails.
I do have a question that I'm going to make you jump back and like once we're done with this question. So
we can get to my one later.
No. Make him jump around. He likes it. It's exercise.
Yeah,
exactly. We'll flick through it. So I'm just going to get to the something from down there, and of course, I'm showing off wonderful art from the book because we just have the time to do that. Oh, little bit of reflection, but we'll manage. That German fellow, he wasn't German, first of all. So he is German. He wasn't Spanish, is what it is.
Yeah. He spoke German.
He's caught up in Gold Rush ideas. So there's a lot of information on mining in that scenario, and this is someone who has come across from Europe who has tried to become a gold miner and who was not prepared for the heat and the isolation and the just crazy amounts of physical exertion that is placed upon you as a gold miner. And he found an old set of Spanish conquistador armor in like an old mine and decided that he was a conquistador. So he's put it on and he's wandering through, and he's just gone completely mad. The mountain lion is also in there. It is an official encounter that you go through. So when you fumbled looking for a safe place, I thought that was absolutely perfect.
Oh yeah, that was.
I think navigation rolls were the ones that we consistently did poorly on. Despite having two people that were all right at it,
no,
it just felt
like I had the highest navigate at
right.
50,
So very frequently, we were getting stuck places or whatever. I just kind of being the mountain man who got us lost in a third or fourth mountain.
No, my problem was there's a lot of skills that go into being a mountain man. So to do that, my spread had to be like I had to have like 50s in a lot of stuff. Like. It's a tough gig out there, guys. It is not easy to be.
What was your education as well? Because unless your skills weren't based on education,
it's always based a bit on education.
They would have at least been half based on education, and I'm certain.
I love 40s and 50s and a bunch of stuff though, because then you can just do things.
Yeah.
I liked whack 10 to 20 points in just tons of stuff, just because if you ever need someone to swim, that's me.
I agree. I think you have a lot more fun if you spread if you spike and do one thing really well.
Disagree.
Yeah.
It's playstyles.
Totally disagree. Being able to heal literally anyone or first aid anyone or psychology anyone and just be like, I just do this. Also make drugs that will murder everyone. Yeah, that was fun to just do that.
That is true.
For context, and those wondering, my education was 49, which is probably spot on. Like, that's pretty average.
Did you get an increase? So you must have gotten an increase, right?
I must have gotten it. I think it was 45,
probably.
And then I got a four count increase to it.
Hell yeah.
Or I lost one somewhere.
Oh, my education was lower than yours.
That makes sense. I'm older than you.
I'm pissed.
So Shattered Earth, Poison Sky, which is Santa Rosita. You arrive in the quarantine. You go through. Now, what's meant to happen is that you slowly like try and infiltrate the town and figure out what's going on. And the night after you get let out of the quarantine, there is a murder in the town, and you are framed for it. And it turns into a courtroom drama, and you have to try and.
Fennis who
prove your
probably
innocence.
would have done
Wow.
it.
I have no memory
All
of
of
this.
that.
No, we didn't
Well,
do it.
we didn't do it.
The night
we
we
ruined
got
it?
out, you immediately burnt down a textile factory.
Yeah.
we
kidnapped
committed an
someone.
actual crime.
Yeah, exactly. There's
Within
no need to
moments
frame you
of
for murder.
escaping.
And then we left.
Exactly.
It does show you that
well done, gang.
sometimes the players don't play it according to plan.
Um,
I think there was a few times we did
A
that.
lot of the time.
Well, this was the grand one, because right after there you go to Shadow Mountain, which is the lair of the serpent people. And they've got inside the hollow part of the
Sorry.
volcano, all these balloons filled with this new and improved serpent person virus.
Whoops.
And immediately, rather than going through into it, Griff and Grease climbed the outside of the mountain and dropped dynamite down into the very, very delicate system of the mountain, which was being prepped for eruption, and blew the whole thing sky high, basically.
We goofed like a tiny bit.
Yeah, that was a big goof.
Oh, it was wonderful. That was just tossing dynamite into the lion's den without not quite knowing, whether the lion has a machine gun or not. But it all worked out. And you still got to face in some form the amazing Child of Yig, which is the serpent with arms and a sword.
I thought I remembered it having a sword.
Yeah, it's very,
Kicks the
very
shit
cool.
out of it too.
Yeah, you absolutely took
That was
it
one
out.
where we all just went running around. Blanca went right to the back chasing their
I
target.
left.
You buggered off
Yeah.
to go and do.
I
I was
don't
pretty
think I
sure you
was
were a
there
lizard
either.
at the time. No, because you and I came from the side, so it was just
Oh.
Mac fighting the thing for a while, and I came around the corner. He got to like 1 health. I came around the corner and kill stole.
Is that when Mac got caught in the tunnel and you were like alone
No, that
fighting
was-
this thing in? That was the
that
last
was
one.
after.
was
I
the
think
one.
that was after. Yeah.
I think that was before. That was in the first mountain.
Yeah, that was the
where
first
there
mountain.
wasn't.
So one where I lost. I
Dynamite.
dropped a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So after Shattered Earth, Poison Sky, we jumped to something from down there, which is
What would have happened? Here's my question.
yes.
Because after that stream, you hinted at the fact that had we not figured out an antidote, very bad things would have happened because we exploded the volcano. And I'm kind of curious what those very bad things would have looked like.
Yeah. So if you explode the volcano, if the serpent person plan goes off without a hitch, the virus spreads all across New Mexico, and it's not stopped by the borders of the state. It spreads throughout the West, and you basically have a huge amount of cleanup work that you can do. Typically the game is played a few years before it was set for us. In an earlier, where stuff is a little less developed, and
Before the invention of dynamite?
no.
Because I don't have any time for Western games set before the invention of dynamite.
I think you'll be
Nowadays.
safe, fortunately. But
It's kind of good medically that we said it when we did, because at that point in time, they'd worked out what germs were. Not that much earlier than that. They didn't know yet. And
yeah, which is a lot of fun.
Small demons.
There's basically a grand you can wander through the entire Wild West. You still do the scenarios, but there's the idea of this kind of post-apocalyptic vibe that happens for the whole thing, and you're trying to sort of repair the damage that it's not so much the damage that you've done as the damage you weren't able to stop. And
In our case, it was the damage we did.
yeah,
Like
and,
we straight up caused it.
It very easily could have gone that way. I prepped in that direction, and thought it would have been pretty interesting. Oh, there was a moment where right after that campaign, Dave and I were talking and going, "Wow, two campaigns in a row that I'm going to get are going to end in colossal explosions and absolute disaster." So that's a lot of fun. But yeah, no, that's
Always
that
a risk.
there's absolutely a cool fail state for that scenario. And there's a cool fail state for a lot of it. The Down Darker Trails books in general, and Shadows Over Stillwater, really focus a lot on if one serpent person gets away, what happens here? Where can you go? What can you do? What direction would you like to take? There's a bunch of information, for example, about how you can loop Tarz's band back into the story. I took some of that when I brought them back into the finale. But yeah, there you go. So we did something from down there, which is the story of Jim Owens. I flipped the names there. Jim Owens is actually the name of the poor owner of the mine who gets attacked, and not the bandit that comes in. And I had jumped in when I did it, and I went, oh, poo. And I didn't want to flip it back, so I just continued swapping all of the names of the goodies to be baddies and baddies to be goodies.
Oh my goodness.
For the entire scenario.
Brilliant.
We didn't notice.
Oh yeah, well I'm glad to hear.
If anyone reads the book, they would.
Why is yeah.
So
Why
when
are they on the
does the
baddie
mine, when does the mine owner like grab the 6 guns and start shooting the baddies, shooting the goodies?
I think that scenario went about as well as it could have. I think that the doc, of course, got corrupted by an eldritch being that would ultimately lead to his downfall. But
and Griff put a bunch of people's fucking heads on spikes. That was
necessary. That was
It was
necessary.
not. It was not. It was.
It to ensure that no one ever went to that mine ever again and did the same
That was
goddamn
messed
thing.
up, man. That was messed up.
Both of those things were necessary. Heads
Yeah.
on spikes, touching the statue. Both 100%.
This is why you guys don't have badges.
I don't like Doc's on my side. This seems.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to be on any side that Doc is on.
Hey, Doc was always on your side. That's why you got to let.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
thought
concern.
Yeah.
I thought the scene between Grease and Griff was really cool there, because that was the sort of beginning of Griff's turn into full revenge mode, and Griff and Grease, who had sort of
and
been
it led
tight
into
mischievous.
the next. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
That fucked Griff up a lot and led to him being really obsessed in the next one. But I'm glad ultimately, like, that one went according to plan, which as a group we kind of needed. Like, the last one did not go according to plan and went quite badly. So it was nice to have one that kind of went off a little bit.
The final
smoother.
one.
The one where we almost blew up a mountain.
Oh yeah, that went awfully.
That
Yeah.
one went badly. And it was nice to have one where we did okay.
Yeah. Rachel pointing out that Jim Owens is also a comedian, which is something that must have been,
I think he's only in Australia, though. I think so. I think you're fine.
Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. There's a there's a popular TV show that used a character called Jimmy Barnes, unironically, and I always was like, oh my god, this is so bizarre.
For those who don't know, Jimmy Barnes is an Australian musician. Anyway, moving on. No one's gonna get that reference.
Iconic.
Yeah.
So after, and that's the town of San Rafael, the very small town that you visited in that, and you wrapped things up there pretty well. That was when as well. I think you might have been muted there for a second, Art.
No, I just whispered to myself.
Oh, just whispered, yeah.
I just, enunciation is something I do a lot. So even when I whisper, I make sure that people can see.
And that was also when we really had Max start to leverage his knowledge of the law to make sure that Blanca was getting away with what she was doing, and the bandits who came through were not getting in too much trouble.
I like to think of it as abusing station to aid friends do criminal things.
If you get to the age of like 50 something out here in the West,
You're allowed to.
That's a pretty good achievement. So I feel like you've earned a little bit of kickback. I don't know.
I think
it
so
was
too.
justified.
I still think it's really interesting, and this was I think something I alluded to, but I don't know if I ever actually said it, was the hypocrisy that Mac showed in those two moments, in the moment of Hank Hanratty versus the bandits, because Hank Hanratty was trying to turn his life around and do good for the town, and you strung him up, and the three bandits were still like wanted for murder, and because they helped us, you twisted the law to their advantage. And I was like, when it's personal, you go full law. When it isn't personal, you'll bend the law because you think it's worthwhile. And I was like, internally, as Joseph was like, you're such a fucking hypocrite.
So, Orlanthi Fool's come in with a question. Interrupting you before you can respond.
Okay.
We'll jump back in a second. How did you find applying the Call of Cthulhu rule set to the Wild West? I'm going to answer first as a keeper because I think that's an important question. The Down Darker Trails book helped a lot. It has a lot of minor tweaks that gives you a little push in the direction of turning your investigators into more heroic Wild West tropes. It gives you a little bit of track, a little bit of ride. There's a couple of other tweaks, rules around being a duelist and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty helpful. I am very familiar with the BRP system in general, having played a lot of Call of Cthulhu and RuneQuest and, old BRP titles. So I feel relatively confident applying it to anything. But what about the rest of you? What did you think? I think, especially for those of you who hadn't played much BRP stuff before.
I think it should be said that in applying the Call of Cthulhu rule set to the Wild West, I think we were very well served by using the Pulp Cthulhu variations of the rules, because even though regular Cthulhu is about ordinary people up against the mythos, and putting that in the Wild West, it's just another setting of ordinary people up against the mythos. But our these days, our exposure to the setting of the Wild West is from these crazy outlandish spaghetti westerns of these are kind of mighty heroes and mythical characters doing amazing things. So I think we were really it was a good call to use the Pulp Cthulhu rules
100%.
because it gave us that action-packed kind of experience of being real badasses.
I agree. Just a little bit more health to be able to take a shot in a gunfight or pull out the talent when you really wanted to use it. I think the Pulp Cthulhu rules really served there, and I liked the way the tropes applied. I think that you picked the sidekick trope, right, Dave? I think that was the guiding one for Greece.
Yep.
Yeah,
I was Mac's sidekick from the beginning.
Yeah, I think those land in well. I think that there's a lot of there's a lot more that you can dive into with it. I think that if we were playing a game where we were focusing more on some of the other aspects, because we were Pulp, we sort of didn't sweat some of the smaller details, like tracking exactly our horses, tracking exactly, some of the details of our supplies in the West. But
stealing them.
Yeah, exactly.
Borrowing.
And that could have been a very enjoyable thing. I don't think it would have suited a stream as well, because I don't think anyone wants to see a stream of us doing math on how many days we can survive.
Says you.
But in your own setting, in your own environment, playing a thing where you're counting out and making sure that you have enough horses and enough supplies to make the Oregon Trail or whatever it is could be.
Rules are just very cinematic, which is what
exactly
we wanted, I think.
I quite like westerns as a rule. I think they're quite a cool setting, and I think it lends itself to the Call of Cthulhu setting really well. And I think normally, for those who don't know, Call of Cthulhu is set in about the 1920s, is sort of the standard era for it. This is only bringing it back maybe 40 years before that. And I personally like anything that gives people less technology, that less reliance on, oh, we should call someone. Oh, wait, we don't have telephones. Okay.
Yeah.
That's why
Write them a
1920s
letter.
is good. Modern is really hard, because modern you're just like, well, why don't I call the police or look something up on the internet? And then 1920s gets rid of that, and then Wild West gets rid of that. You're like, we can't go to the police because there's one sheriff, and maybe
And
he
they're
won't care.
incompetent.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of have to solve things yourself, and also there's an element of more spooky stuff happened in the past.
Absolutely. One of the things that always trips me out talking about the 1890s when we were playing is that, of course, the Wild West setting can be before that, but I played a lot of Gaslight Cthulhu and set in 1890s London. And it always weirds me out to think, wow, while this is all happening in London, you've got this height of the Victorian era, you jump across to the Wild West and it's all the same. It's a really odd I always find it hard to realize that those settings are happening simultaneously.
It's the same era, just a different setting. Yeah, it's cool.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the question, Olenthi Fool. That was a rousing discussion.
Yeah.
I'll add one last detail. And this is something that I made quite liberal use of. There are a bunch of historical figures in the book that are fully statted out, everything from Stagecoach Mary to Jesse James, and I would just pull their stat blocks whenever I needed a cool gangster or anything like that. I didn't dive so much into the history, but that was something that, you and I will have to have a talk about at some point, Daniel, because there's some really cool stuff here.
There's a lot of cool mythical, semi-mythical folks from back then.
I had a question prepped. We were meant to prep some questions.
Well, did you want to take a chance to answer Art's accusation of hypocrisy? I'd like to jump in and defend you for a sec. Can I jump in and defend you?
Yeah, sure, I wasn't gonna.
Can I kick you while you're down?
Genuinely, Griff saw that as character growth, because I think after then you stop looking at the lore so concretely. There's still times where you're like, the law is the law and you have to uphold the law. But with that, and also in some regard, the ending, when basically they were like, official channels say you should stop. And Mac kind of went, I'm hanging up the badge. And then at the end, you're like, the badge means more than that. The badge means more than the law. It means doing the right thing. So I saw that as, Griff saw that as character growth, because Griff was in the same camp as the Doctor with Hank Hatteray. He was like, this is dumb. This is man's assuming law over nature, basically, and it makes no sense, but it was your call. And at that time Griff needed you to find the other his bandit. And anyway, so
I thought the character growth there was, I think all the characters grew and developed as we went. But Mac, do you have anything to say in your defense?
No, it was just inconsistent, I think. Character choices on my part. I just like to look at my ideology / beliefs, as noted on my Call of Cthulhu character sheet, is there is an evil in society that should be rooted out. So it doesn't say anything in there about following the law or having like a code or following the letters of the law. It's just see evil, root it out.
And I sort of did see to an extent that you really didn't compromise on the task you were sent to do, and on the job that you were sent to do.
That's true.
And that was the most consistent thing. I think Mac never compromised on stopping the Green-Eyed Gang, and I think that even when it came to breaking the law himself by giving up the badge and refusing to listen to his superiors in the Marshal's service, he went after the Green-Eyed Gang. You did the duty, so to speak.
My ideology was even less consistent. I think I broke it in the session 0. Mine was do what you're told.
What?
That's ridiculous. That's still canon.
Is that still on your character sheet?
It says do as you're told and things come good.
Is that still on your character sheet right now?
Yeah, you need to delete that right now.
No,
because
just
a single time
never
where
at
you
the
did
start.
what you were told.
I think when I first started off, I was going to play him as more of like a, listen to Mac, and then I started playing, and I immediately changed my mind.
Yeah, in hindsight, the sidekick archetype may have not been the best.
Well, he started off as a sidekick, and I liked the format for it. I think it worked alright. I mean, that was my archetype, but my occupation was like street punk, which I think I led into a little bit more.
I liked the gradual growth as well. I think it was really it go from sidekick nurtured all the way up.
Being your own man and the end of it.
Or if anything, by the end, I actually listened to what I was told like twice.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
An ideology isn't something you always do. It's something you strive for. I strive to one day do what I'm told to fucking do.
I'm thinking we all really ended up with one of the classic Cthulhu endings from each character. We had, Mac become a cultist. We had the Doc go insane and die. We had Griff make it to retirement, and we had Grease go out to be presumably an investigator and continue. Yeah. Oh yeah,
I guess
comic book era.
I'm curious now what Griff's belief was or ideology was, if we're like
Griff's mine. Yeah.
I mean, the other
we'll
two
go through ours. Yeah. Well, mine was that the ideals of civilization are bad. Like it was kind of not necessarily the best way of putting it, but and that there is some greater power, but man's interpretation of it perverts it. There was a lot of anti-establishment, like anti sort of organized religion and anti law. The idea that because Griff went to war, and that was him seeing that man's rules are dumb. Why are men allowed to stand up and shoot each other? That doesn't make any sense. That's not right. So he left to go live in the wild and live outside of man's law. And every time something came into his life, bringing, like, Elijah Smythe brought religion into his circle and used it in a perverted way to kill a bunch of people. So Griff saw that as very negative. What about yours?
I modified mine halfway through. So I kept my original one, which was he who runs away lives to aid another day, which is why Joseph tended to not get involved in fighting things because I, as a player, couldn't. But I also added, after the statue incident, the greatest good for the greatest number.
Yes.
Which sort of, I think, became his like changed rallying cry. The most interesting thing, like, for me about Joseph's arc, and just like some subtle, here's a look into the inside of Art's mind, because this was the first time I played with the whole group, I decided on a character who was going to not say a lot, defer to other people, because I, as a new player, was like, I don't want to like talk too much, and I just want to stay in the background. And then as I became more comfortable playing with everyone, the character got sort of more assertive, but it also played really nicely into like the arc that I was not trying to tell, but that got told. And like, so if you are brand new to playing a character and you're scared, just be scared and then not be anymore later.
And then pick up every artifact that comes your way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Touch, not related to this stream, but so this is the first Call of Cthulhu's game, like campaign I've ever played. The only other game I played was a one-shot with a like drive it like you stole it mentality, where I think like my skull got pulled off and my spine got ripped out by this like slug lion monster. And the first thing I did when we came across anything weird, the keeper was like, oh, there's this weird kind of clear goopy stuff, and I was like, I taste it.
Oh, I was gonna go with touch it, but you turned into 11.
What does it taste like? And so those are my two tips. Always taste the goop and touch all the statues.
It is bizarre that someone else does that. We have a joke in our personal game, which is I lick the paste, because we had a character that licked paste off like a strange eldritch, and he went blind. Like that was it, and that was an ongoing campaign.
Well, there you go. No, I just fit really well into the Call of Cthulhu universe.
Do dumb shit. Hell yeah.
Rachel's jumped in and mentioned that their ideology was everything happens for a reason, and Shotgun Go Brewer is also a fantastic ideology. Ada's shotgun was lethal.
Mother Mary.
Yeah.
The shotgun was called Mother Mary, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. I thought it was interesting that Ada and Greece had this sort of very strong religious angle inside the group, which I thought was
it's because the rest of you were godless heathens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it because I was like afraid that Griff didn't like religion that much. He didn't like organized religion, and I was like, oh, am I going to be one of like 6 people that don't like religion? And then the other guys turned out to be religious. And I was like, this is great. It gives me a chance to emphasize that I'm not.
Yeah.
Especially in those early ones where we like walked into churches and stuff, and Griff would be like, I'm gonna stay out here.
And
it's funny you should mention that. For my meaningful location, which is on my backstory section of my character sheet, I must have randomly rolled a spiritual place, which I then put no thought into whatsoever.
Hey, pick the ones you're interested in.
And that's where Mac ended up.
Oh, ouch!
Spiritual place.
If you want better, so did I. And I'm pretty sure I was actually a spirit.
Oh, wow. We ended up in the same place.
Yeah.
The dice tell the story sometimes.
Was your meaningful location also a church, Greece?
Nope. Mine was
Okay.
Chicago.
Just in general.
No, the musical.
Oh dear.
Okay, musical.
Um,
I don't.
So-
Mine were not great. I think I changed them pretty quickly.
I think-
but that's
I think
the
you're
way
allowed
you
to- I think
you do
Yeah.
them
You don't
to
really
get
know
you
who
draw
you're
inspiration, and then you juggle up. So once you've got a feel for the character.
that's why we played a few games before
Yeah.
we started, so that we could feel out who our characters were a little bit, know a bit more about the way our characters felt about each other as well, and different sorts of things. And you can change things that aren't working. You can change your scores around if it doesn't really make sense. I think a good keeper is a little bit lenient with that in players figuring out what they want to play, because you shouldn't necessarily lock it in from the start and being like, well, this is who I'm playing. I'm not enjoying this, but this is who I'm set to play.
And the best thing you can do is take into account what everyone else is playing, and even if you've got a strong character concept, there's a way you can modify it to make the party more cohesive. Then do it.
And that's also why, I mean, talking about the religion thing's cool, because if you have people that are going to butt heads, it's much more interesting. If our character was all neutral and one person was, pro something and no one else cared, you're just going to do that. But on the same thing also, if everyone's butting heads on every fucking interaction, it's a train wreck. So, pick a couple of hills to die on and then chill for other ones, and that's the cool of it, because you want to have some cool interactions.
Well, that's why it was good to have the Green Eye Gang as a uniting thing. That was like, no matter what, we're all tracking down the Green Eye Gang. It was really good for cohesion, and in that way, the Keeper gave us that, which was nice, so that we didn't really have to worry about it. Sometimes you have to do that as a player, be like, why are we together as players? And it's not a bad thing to come up with it as players. It's not a bad thing that the Keeper gives it to you. It's just different ways of playing it, but it's good to
Absolutely.
have. Think about what bonds you together. What's the glue?
Yeah. And
It's a glue,
I
and you
think
consume
it was really great that the collection of characters that we had, butted heads in some ways, collaborated in some ways. It was a really good dynamic, I think. And I also think that there's also even when Blanca's character finished their arc and stepped away, I think it suited really, really well. I think that was a lovely, the band got done what they needed to do and could finally go back to their family, which also feels like the perfect moment to say a huge thank you to Rachel.
Yeah, absolutely.
For you are amazing and wonderful. And yeah, it was great to have you on the stream, and great to have you roaming through the Wild West with us. Absolutely fantastic.
And now shitposting in chat forever.
Absolutely.
As someone who was in the old chat for Cold Fire,
Shit
there was
posting.
nothing better to do than
Yeah.
shitpost, really, and use channel
antagonize
points
the
that we can't
players.
use anymore.
Oh yeah, I miss channel
Channel
points.
points.
It's funny,
I don't.
they ended very quickly after I used them to give myself luck back.
Did you really? I don't remember that.
Yeah, I did as a joke, but I spent
feel
them, and
like-
I'm like, Grease, luck. Then I added them.
I feel like they should have ended after the very
That's a-
first session when one of the chatters fully resurrected the mountain bear we were fighting.
Yeah, but that was
That
hilarious.
was
No,
the best one we've
no,
ever
that
had. That
was-
was amazing.
That was
No
either
notes.
Reaper or Pastor.
Yeah,
I'll hit you
we're
with a
working
car.
together. They're
And then they thought about doing it again.
I know. I made
you did,
Rachel's character hit Jamie's character. With
Yes,
a car.
you
That
made
was
them push a
brilliant.
roll and fumble. Oh, that was fun. That was a train wreck.
there's another campaign.
We should put them back.
While while we're on we're sort of going through the campaigns. I'm going to hijack it for a second to talk about my arc, the one that finished in, because I think that's what we're up to. We just finished talking about the mine.
Yeah, so let's talk about that again. All right, so
Yeah.
after the mine, after you leave San Rafael, which is something down there from Down Darker Trails, you get to Beneath the Burning Sun, which is also back from the Shadows Over Stillwater campaign.
Oh.
I think Beneath the Burning Sun might be my favorite scenario from the collection. I think the town of Shade is really interesting. I think that it has a lot of really cool detail that can run out in it.
I have to say I agree with you. However, that's me being very selfish because it was very Griff driven, and I had so much fun playing it. I was so happy that Griff didn't get the revenge he wanted because it wasn't what would have done him good. He needed to be told that he needed to release that in a different way. He couldn't have, if he'd killed him, it just would have haunted him more that, you know, murder begets more murder. I'm glad that someone else got the kill on him, basically.
Absolutely. I think that ended really, really excitingly. And I think the chase up into the mountains up to the old Spanish fort is really exciting. So the alteration there, okay, let's talk about the fighting pit. Let me get all of the details perfectly right.
Oh, is the whole story about the fighting pit?
That's all I care about.
So the big difference with how we ran the scenario is that Reverend Smythe is a lot less in control of the situation. And there is more chaos inside Shade. There is kind of a brewing conflict, sort of resurrection of some Civil War era hostility that is happening inside the town. And there is much more focus on you rounding up a posse and getting everyone together and going up into the mountains. The hostage situation still happens. The robbery at the bank still happens. Also, we
prevented the robbery, didn't we? Never happened.
Yes, you prevented the robbery. Actually, yeah, you're absolutely.
Once again, we solved it with Moira
guns.
The fighting pit is a fighting pit. It is one of the attractions in Shade, and there is no full story there. There is a link to if you're trying to. There's a lot of trying to win the respect of the town and trying to. Calm down tensions, and if you win at the fighting pit, that's a way that you can kind of put yourself and be like, look, I'm a big tough person, you have to listen to me, that sort of thing,
and raise a posse to go up into the mountains.
Exactly.
Whereas we took one armored wagon and then we completely ignored it and just climbed a mountain.
Didn't ignore it. I wanted my wagon, I wanted to use it exclusively.
So you're saying if there are all these tensions bubbling away in Shade, then maybe the one competent sheriff we found wasn't actually that competent after all.
Well,
is that what I'm hearing?
maybe Jamie realized that if he had another incompetent sheriff, we might throw a hissy fit.
We might just quit. We might just stop.
Exactly. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I think that the end with the movement towards Reverend Smythe and Griff really trying to kill the Reverend. I really liked that scene.
That was what I was so certain that the Reverend had like mind control powers where he could talk to you and convince you of stuff. Like I was locked into that. Nothing could have driven me out. So I was like, I'm jamming stuff in my ears. I'm so certain. That was my vibe of him. I think I was completely wrong.
Well, I mean, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy because we ended up fighting you anyway.
Yeah.
We ended up it ended up being Griff versus the rest of us.
That's true. Oh my God, I never thought about that. Yeah. He did in the end. He did control me. Far out, Jackson. Oh.
Woof.
Yeah, I meant that. Oh, that was my plan.
I think the Reverend's plan to raise the Starspawn of Cthulhu is pretty exciting, and I think that was a really cool arc. And of course, right after that, back in Shade, we had that wonderful scene between the Doc and Griff. We had the Marshal give Grease the badge. It was wonderful. A lot of cool stuff.
There was a lot of character growth in that one, which is like as sort of the penultimate third to final one is like felt like we were getting to the end of a lot of our arcs or stuff was starting to really start spinning up.
Exactly. And of course you have the snake oil salesman inside that scenario as well that was leading towards the scenario Scanlan's daughter, which despite the fact that you almost set off a volcano in the Shadows of Stillwater scenario, you completed that. You did about as well as you can because that's pretty difficult. Scanlan's daughter was the only scenario that really didn't quite...
Just didn't do it.
The word you're looking for is failed. We failed.
And the thing is, I don't see how he failed it because, I mean, we abducted the kid, we murdered that woman. I don't know what more you wanted from us. And we burnt the whole thing down and killed the old doctor. Like, we were ticking boxes. We were kicking goals.
Absolutely. I think that what's interesting is that we'd sort of hit that point in a long-running campaign where your characters are so battle-weary that they are going in with a very explicit purpose and really trying to accomplish something powerfully and quickly. And you got that done to a certain extent, even though you chose to let...
Thirds of the module, though.
Sorry?
We missed like 2/3 of the module.
Yes, so a little sneak peek into the actual module. So the full story is that there is a Romeo and Juliet type situation going on between the Scanlan ranch and the what's the name of the other ranch?
Romero.
That's it, the Romero.
Romeo.
As in, yeah.
To be honest, looking back, it wasn't subtle, or it was
See,
subtle enough that I missed
when it's
it.
in front of you, you don't pick it up. It's only after.
Yeah,
There's actually a heading Romero and Juliet, as in Juliet Scanlan.
Juliet Scanlan. Yeah.
Oh God. I feel about as dumb about that.
I mean, that's just funny.
When I realized why the Green-Eyed Gang was called the Green-Eyed Gang, which I'm sure we'll get to, but I think I got that halfway through the session. I was just
I think we owe an apology to whoever wrote that campaign. Basically, they put a lot of time and effort into that, and from the sounds of it, it was pretty well written and pretty nice. But, as characters, we just didn't.
No, it was still
that's the
so
beauty
much
of Call of
fun. We did a
Cthulhu, right?
bunch of dumb shit in it. I thought it was a great one.
If you want a lovely little picture from Scanlan's daughter, lovely kissing scene of a
Well, that's
snake person.
horrible.
Yikes.
Yeah. So the story there is that there's a serpent person who has fallen in love essentially with someone in the Romero ranch and is killing off members of the ranch one by one and sparking this violence between the two families. And you have to try and figure out where the serpent person is and track them down and figure out why they're there. And then there's the added complication of the doc's mentor being in the situation, you're healing people and doing research into the serpent people, just causing more chaos.
So was Juliet Scanlan a lizard person? Was that the idea?
Juliet Scanlan's twin is a lizard person.
Oh.
What?
Yes.
There was a twin?
Twin?
Yes. Yeah, that area out at the side where they've been dumping the
just
bodies
as I
is the hiding
expected.
place of Juliet Scanlan's twin.
Which you
and-
did drop to me, and I was going to say, let's go there. And then
it just didn't
and
happen.
the house burned down.
Then the house started burning on fire because someone shot someone's mother and
yeah, that happened.
Well, if we're going to be
I'm
pointing
pretty sure, like,
fingers.
figures.
Figures.
Me as well. The doc, like my doc, also said, if you want to find out, go to this location. And I think like if shooting hadn't happened, maybe we might have, or like Joseph might have said something, but yeah, as soon as that all happened, it was like, bye, I'm setting the house on fire.
Exactly. That was my attempt to sort of give you in the same way that the thing that Griff wanted the most was revenge. So you have Elijah Smythe going, kill me, kill me. The thing you wanted most was, knowledge and to find your mentor. So you find your mentor going, yes, I'm here. Let's look at all this creepy stuff. And I think that, I think that it was very cool, the choices that Joseph made.
It's true. Every choice had complications to it.
There you go.
Never use that snake venom stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's all of the scenarios we played from the book, except for a scenario called Return to Castro Negro, I believe is the name of the scenario.
But before we got to that, I've got a little bit of a show and tell after we got back to Shade.
Show and tell.
Yes.
Mac walked into the solicitor's office and wrote his last will and testament. I don't know if anyone wants to hear that or if it's just the ramblings of an old man.
Love
Absolutely,
to hear that.
but I need it to be in character, please.
I wouldn't have it any other way. So yes, for some reason he's got a credit score of 50 something, which we decided was he just saved all of his wages. So he had $16,000 sitting in a bank in Georgia, and he just bashed out a last will and testament with the solicitor there, and named Doc his executor, which I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
That was
Well,
the best call of the
technically
limited
you're
pool.
not dead, but if you are, I'm
that's
still
true.
inside your head to execute the will.
Well, no, but I did ask, Mac did ask Reese to tell everyone he was dead
That's good.
and to go ahead and open the will. So aside from all the legalities that were scribbled out by the lawyer, here are the words he had to say. Doc, hope you don't mind being my executor. Figured you'd have the best sense for what to do with my money, since you don't seem to have much want for yourself. Just see if you can make yourself and the others comfortable. And if you use it to help people, all the better. If you'll indulge the ramblings of a dead man, the only advice I'd give is to dumb things down now and again. Smart men like you tend to build complicated lives themselves. Hope you also got the wits to know when you're in over your head and take a vacation or something. Here, Canada's nice. Griff, old bastards like you and me ain't got much use for advice, I reckon. Too late to turn any new leaves in autumn. If you outlive me, I only hope you find some peace. From what I've seen, you tend to put more good into the world than harm, which is more than many out here in the West can say. So many submit to bestial urges once they're free of civilization. I guess you already smell enough like an animal not to act like one. Grease, keep the badge clean. Learn to say yes sir, no sir. Count to 5 in your head before you say anything. You'll learn more. Try seeing the best in folk, especially if you notice no one else is. You got plenty of power in that shooting hand of yours. Power to kill. Sometimes it feels like life is cheap out here, especially when we deal with people with dollar values on their heads. But the truth is, life is precious. And that ought to weigh heavy on you every time you reach for your iron. But I don't know. Smarter folks than me have probably said that better. Read a damn book. Folks, it's been a hell of a time wrapping up my line of work with such a fine posse at my side. Hope we bought a few moments of quiet for the wilds.
Oh, wonderful.
That was
Hell
beautiful.
yeah.
Great
Oh.
stuff. Thank you, Jackson.
Thank you.
I liked that your advice to Joseph was like, don't let it get too complicated, you should take a vacation. And technically he did that. It
In
got
your
I guess
head.
so.
And so he just took a vacation from living.
But it's a doc vacation, which is in a lab doing studies.
Working holiday.
His
Oh, that was great, Jackson. What a
Oh.
lovely arc
Stunning.
to Mac's character, and what so well put together.
It was all thanks to the fine characters I had to play.
Which let's talk about Return to Castronegro, which is when you really sort of lent into your it was a great finale. I was really
bad
happy
life
with that
choices.
because
We lent into our bad life choices. You
exactly. It can be hard to pull together those final sessions in campaigns, and I think this one really landed. I think that every character
I absolutely do. And I think a lot of that credit goes to you for I think basically pulling everyone together and realizing and realizing what the characters needed to fit.
A cannon.
canon, exactly.
Genuinely, what Greece needed was a cannon.
I mean, exactly.
Something awesome to be.
Very important.
Even if it didn't really play that much of a role in the actual.
So Return to Castronegro is interesting. There is a really famous Call of Cthulhu scenario called The Castle of Castronegro, which is set in the 1920s. And it is basically this full and detailed scenario where you go and you deal with a crazed cult running out of a hidden town called Castronegro. And at the back of Shadows Over Stillwater, there is a very, very small extended seed, which basically says, we've realized that Castronegro is pretty close to where all of this takes place. So it is conceivable that you could just send people straight there. So it's like a great preview. What would happen if you got to Castronegro early?
I dig that.
Yeah.
That's great.
So
That's
does
all I had
that
to
mean
say.
in the 1920s Castronegro book,
Mac
there's
is
an old
there.
marshal in charge of the town that plays as the villain? I think that's pretty likely.
with an insane doctor who is very good at healing people rattling in his skull.
Haunting the church.
Yeah,
That's great.
That's,
I'd play that.
that's pretty Cthulhu-y, yeah.
Well, I think I think that hopefully Mac manages to hold it together for a little longer than that. Maybe that's Castronegro in a modern day setting.
You can use that line. What's the Glorantha line? Your Glorantha may be different. It's
Yeah,
the
your
same
Glorantha
thing.
is
Your
very
Cthulhu
different.
may be different. Ours is
Exactly.
ours has a slightly different. Our Castronegro is a little different.
Absolutely.
The may vary.
Green-eyed gang obviously was because Christopher has a bright green eye, a scar. And no more complicated than that. I thought it was really interesting to have the final reason that the Green-eyed gang were out there, just to be someone that I really tried to give everybody a reason that you were robbed of your revenge, so to speak, or you didn't want to kill someone. And I really thought it was interesting to have the idea of you can't kill the last person. If you do, that's you're dooming yourselves, so to speak, which I think is fantastic because they died and you threw yourselves in the true Call of Cthulhu way to achieve your character's goal and to doom yourselves, which is wonderful and exactly what we needed.
I think the ultimate moral of this campaign is an eye for an eye leaves everyone blind.
Yeah. Well, a green eye for a green eye, huh?
Hey ho.
Look, that is everything. We've talked through every scenario that we played. I was considering also running something from Devil's Gulch, which is a old BRP Wild West Chaosium book, but we ended up not using that. If any of the four of you have any other questions about the campaign, ask them now. Otherwise, I might ask you another question or two, and then we'll say thanks one last time.
I prepped one question exactly.
All right. Well, you better let us have it then.
All right. Well, we talked a bit about this, I think, between streams at some point, but I made a note that the Western genre as a whole is a lot like fantasy in that it's packed with archetypes that we all recognize. So I would like to know which movies and shows have you seen your characters in? I'm not saying you saw your character from this show. I'm just saying, have you seen your characters in any movies and shows? Because I think I gave the note to our wonderful artist, Ruth, basically just a board of Lee Van Cleef and the Dollars trilogy. That's where I pulled Mac from. And I've seen Griff in the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. He's the old trapper in the carriage at the end. And I've seen...
That's not who I was thinking of, but yeah.
And I've seen Grease in Unforgiven, which is a 90s Western directed by Clint Eastwood. The Schofield kid is this kind of uppity young, somewhat impotent.
Impotent?
But yes, has anyone else got further reading?
Yeah, can I go first? You said you... okay, I'll go first. Mine is almost entirely ripped from True Grit and Jeff Bridges in True Grit. If anyone's ever seen that, you will know that is like just the character, this big hairy. He is a marshal in that, not like a mountain man, but he is that sort of like, we're going up the mountain and we're gonna.
Did you include it in your art picture?
I think I did. Reference
because mine.
I think, yeah, sorry.
Mine was very much Whitey Wynn in Godless, who's played by Thomas Brody Sangster. I had a picture of him in my brief as well, and I like the kid gunslinger who's way too cocky. I just think it's fun, and it's an archetype. It exists in the West a lot.
Well, Full notes that Grease is apparently in a movie called War Wagon.
Yeah.
There you are. And Rachel Dad notes that the kid in Unforgiven shoots one man and then immediately retires, so...
So I've got a better KD than that kid.
I just jumping in with a couple of thoughts. I weirdly kept thinking of, and this isn't quite right, and I don't know why I kept thinking of it, but the movie Stagecoach. I don't know if you've seen the old Stagecoach movie. It's I think John Wayne in it, there's these characters traveling across really dangerous territory, and there are two fighters amongst them, so to speak. There's John Wayne, who is this classic American cowboy hero, I suppose. And there is another actor alongside him who is playing this sophisticated gentleman character, but who is deadly with a pistol. And I would consistently think of that character when I thought of Doc. It wasn't necessarily their martial ability, but it was the way that they carried this kind of restraint and almost disappointment about the entire situation into that really reminded me. And I thought that was very cool. And my Elijah Smythe was trying to channel from There Will Be Blood, the young preacher, as close as possible. Because
that nailed that.
Or the Master from, it's not really a Western, but the Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in The Master. I think that kind of has a Western vibe to it, in my opinion.
Doc's is definitely the toughest. It doesn't have one that immediately springs to mind for me.
Probably because I don't watch westerns.
Yeah.
The only western I think I've seen is True Grit, and I was very drunk. So I vaguely remember it, and I vaguely remember being like, well, this is the thing. So Doc had no. So in case it is of interest to anyone who is watching or to the rest of the cast, Doc started as like a character that would fill a role that no one else was taking. If you're new to a game, always pick a healer, because you can just sit in the background and be like, I'm useful, don't shoot me. But then after taking like the mechanics of Doc, I actually had to sit down and thought about, well, and this was off Jamie's thing of like, why is your doctor so good at medicine and not in the city practicing medicine? So part of that was sitting down and going like, well, what kind of upbringing did Joseph have? What kind of family did he have? What kind of mentoring did he have? What took him to the place where he would have learnt all of his skills? And then why is he back again? And that informed a lot of the conversations with like Griff. That informed where his laudanum addiction came from. He got kicked out because literally, as he told Griff, he accidentally killed someone, sort of, and then was dismissed on malpractice. And so like the really hard thing, and the reason that in my note to Griff, there is a comment about the boy he used to be, is when I was coming up with Joseph, I have a memory of Joseph at 5 years old, running down a street, going to like a doctor, his local surgery, and like peering over the window, and I just have this like foggy outline of what he would have seen. And so Joseph, while he was based on some archetypes, at least in terms of the way I developed him, he's a living, breathing person with literal memories that I can now just pull. Like, he's got 4 siblings and parents who've all got names, and like they've all had interactions. I had a vague idea of who Doc Hackney was and like why he knew about surgery versus just standard medicine. So like, I hope that's why Doc doesn't come across in a movie, because he's a little more fleshed out, I think. I hope
with that.
And then
like an archetypal Wild Western movie character.
Our 3 characters are from Fantastic Mr. Fox.
I was just going to say that.
That was the movie that we keep referencing.
For some background, we have a Discord channel where we do stream planning and shit posting during the games, and it was tradition every time Mac, Grease, and Griff were in a scene together, I would post a screenshot of
you put it in the Twitch chat?
Fantastic Mr. Fox, and tell them, no, it was only over the Discord. This was a Discord exclusive shit posting. Because the first time I imagined them in a scene together, those were the silhouettes. It was a tall, skinny guy,
it's so
big wide guy, and a little guy. Good times.
You with your sort of actor's background, which I know you have too, Jackson. You and Daniel as well. All of you, you put so much effort into really developing these characters in such a personal way, and I really appreciate that. I'll move on, but one last thing: Griff is to a T Lamb from Joe Abercrombie's Red Country.
I haven't
and,
seen that. I don't
Never
know.
seen it.
it is a book.
Oh, it's a book. Yeah.
And
Griff can't read.
to a T. It almost fits
Happy
this
accident.
perfectly well.
Oh, it's pretty tropey. He's like a big mountain man. Like, yeah, I feel like I didn't break any boundaries. When I came
I
up
think it
with
was great. I think it was great.
Archetypes are
Lan
there
is
for
the
a
best
reason.
character.
I
take
do,
an archetype
I do
and you build
enjoy
on it.
playing them. Yeah, and I there's a little insight into character playing. I often sometimes forget what my character is, and having an archetype is like, oh cool, fall back into it really easily. I'm like, I can do that voice, and I'm like, once I got the voice, I was like, I can figure out what I feel
Rough
about
and
most
tough.
stuff from this. Yeah.
That's some further watching for everyone, which you can find more of in chapter 12, of course, of Down Darker Trails. There's a whole bibliography there of fiction and non-fiction and Western TV movies and Weird West stuff as well to inspire your Down Darker Trails games.
Hell yeah. Steal ideas.
Absolutely.
Nothing is original, I just did.
So beyond that, look, I think all of your characters were amazing. We really appreciate the viewers having followed along so much. I have a last question for each of you, and that is, if you wanted to leave our audience with one last taste, one last piece of Mac, of Grease, of Griff, of Joseph, a last line, what would you leave them with?
A last line or a last scene?
Thought, a last image. You know, is it a scene of them working away? Is it a piece of life advice? Is it a comic book? Yeah, one last vignette, one last little piece of content.
I think there's like a little scene where Griff goes up into the mountain and climbs and finds his old log cabin that he built ages ago, and he puts his gun down at the door, and he never picks it up again. He'll trap enough animals to live using traps and things, but I don't think he'll ever pick up that weapon again in his life, and he'll live the rest of his days in peace, and he will be happy.
I like that a lot. I wonder if maybe if he'll still see the spirits that he saw on the streets of Castro Negro or not. But anyway, there will be peace. That's wonderful. I like that.
You can usually see Max stalking back from the outskirts of Castro Negro, having scared off some waylaying traveler, because he has a pulp talent called Scary, which gives him a bonus die on intimidation checks.
God, I never thought of that. That's actually really really good. Like, it's so useful. Like, it's terrifying, scaring people off from the town. Yeah.
And as soon as he's scared someone off, he stalks back into the church, goes down into the cold, dark depths of the basement, and kicks up his feet on the stone altar on a chair, and puts his hat over his bright green eye, and sleeps there, every now and then being startled or stirred by some kind of presence he feels floating around in the room. But otherwise, he's mostly silent.
Wow, I love it. That's great. Joseph, Grease, either of you want to jump in?
Grease does not chill. Grease keeps the pulp and Pulp Cthulhu. I go around fucking gun-slinging monsters, doing sweet-ass shit, and eventually I probably die by the age of 30. Doing something dumb with a cannon. I think Grease takes it upon himself. He took the opposite takeaway from Griff, which is that these things are out there. No one knows how to deal with them. I get my own sweet-ass posse. We ride around. There's comic books.
I was going to say, but he lives on in comic books. Like, there is like a stack of comic books about Grease gunless.
You know, it's only about 25 years to the 1920s. I think it's very possible that, well, how old would Grease be then? He'd be what? Like
40s?
40.
I was like 17.
Which is not particularly old.
So, yeah. I could still be out doing dumb shit. Yay for me.
Brilliant. Joseph?
Well, I think what I want everyone to take away from Joseph's story is whatever they want Like whatever they can see him doing, whiling away eternity, let that be the end that you have for Joseph. For me, I think the letter is the end that I chose for him. And just because I think, just to add a sting in the tail, that bag that he gave Griff was his treasured possession that he was given from Doc Hackney. So there's probably a WH, which was William Hackney, as like engraved in the lock, and then on the other side there'd be a JW, and that's what he gave away, was essentially the thing he cared most about.
Lovely. Amazing.
If you want to catch up on that scene, remind yourself about what was in the letter, or if you missed it and you have no idea what we've been talking about the whole time, you can catch up with the entire Down Darker Trails Shadows Over Stillwater stream on YouTube. Search Chaosium on YouTube.
Great job sticking around for an hour and a
Take
half
a
and
look
spoiling it for yourself.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's a weird one to start on, but have
Wow.
fun.
I think that's about it.
I think we
then.
should take this point to give a big thank you to, obviously, Jamie the Keeper for doing an amazing job of converting all of these scenarios into an amazing campaign. And just thank you so much, man.
Hell yeah.
Pleasure when we have people of your skill in charge.
Thank you. And thank you to all the Chaosium team and to all the writers of Down Darker Trails and of Shadows Over Stillwater. We appreciate it all. It's some great content. And thank you to you, all of the people watching this, whether you caught up with us on Twitch, whether you caught up with us on YouTube down the line, or whether you caught up with us wherever these videos end up. Thank you very much. I think we should about call it out then. Thank you, Jackson. You're an amazing Mac. It was great to have you. Thank you, Art, so much. Joseph was a wonderful, powerful character. Thank you, Daniel. Griff, rather. I'll still make those right up to the end.
It's our own fault.
Do you want to just swap characters, Daniel? We got this far. I think we should just flip them.
Oh, I'm Grease.
Okay, that seems mean.
Wow.
I think that was flawless.
Griff, Griff were fantastic. The epitome of a mountain man. I think, that really, I was really happy with all of those scenes up at the Spanish Fort. The story of Elijah Smythe will be very close to my heart. And Dave, Grease's voice, I will never forget it.
Thanks for trying.
Gunslinger, badass. What a great character.
Rock and roll.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Let's talk about what's coming next, because before we finish off, before we all wave, never fear, the Stream of Chaos will be back soon. We have a lot of exciting things in the works, which we will be talking about, and you will see very soon one surprising thing, if not two surprising things. So get excited. But in the meantime, come back next week, where we will be running a solo scenario, Alone Against the Flames.
All four of us.
Yes, all four
individually.
of us
We're gonna take
at the
turns.
same time with all our microphones on, and
Very confusing.
It'll be a speed run.
Whoever gets there first. No, I'll be running Alone Against the Flames, and yeah, should be fun. We'll have some news on what's coming next. It's going to be exciting. We appreciate you being here. Thank you once again to all the cast. Thank you all. See you later.